Xander trudged through the muddy battlefield, his boots squelching with each step. The acrid stench of smoke and charred flesh hung thick in the air, stinging his eyes and throat. Around him, the once lush meadow was now a graveyard, littered with the lifeless bodies of goblins and the remnants of their brutal assault. As he picked his way across the devastation, Xander couldn't shake the weight of what had just occurred. The power he had unleashed, the force he had wielded, it was both a gift and a curse, a burden he never asked to bear. He paused, crouching down beside one of the crumpled goblin forms. Its eyes were frozen in a final expression of terror, its twisted limbs a testament to the violence that had claimed its life. Xander sighed, gingerly closing the creature's lids, despite the revulsion he felt at having to touch it. "I'm sorry," he whispered, his voice barely audible over the distant sounds of the retreating goblin horde. "This wasn't how it was supposed to be." Xander's mind drifted back to the moment when everything had changed, when the power locked within him had been unleashed. The way the corpses had been drawn into that swirling vortex, crushed and compacted until only a sinister orb remained, it was a sight he knew he would never forget. The sheer destructive force he had harnessed, even if by accident, weighed heavily on his conscience. As an artificer, Xander had been trained to wield magic, to shape the elements with his hands and mind. But this was something else entirely. A power that seemed to transcend the natural order, a force that could snuff out life with terrifying efficiency. It was a responsibility he had never asked for, a burden he wasn't sure he could bear. "Xander," a voice called out, breaking the young man's somber reverie. He turned to see Frey, one of the caravan's mercenary guards, striding towards him, his weathered face etched with concern. "You all right, boy?" Frey asked, placing a calloused hand on Xander's shoulder. "That was some display back there, I'll give you that. But I can't say I'm comfortable with the way you... Well, let's just say I'd rather not be around when you decide to unleash that kind of power again." Xander nodded, his gaze dropping to the ground. "I understand, Frey. Believe me, I didn't mean for any of this to happen. I was just trying to help, to protect the caravan, and dash." I know," Frey interrupted, his tone softening. "You've got a good heart, boy, and you did what you had to do. But those things you summoned, the way they tore through the goblins like they were nothing, it's not natural, Xander. It's not something I want to see again, not if I can help it." Xander opened his mouth to respond, but the words caught in his throat. He knew Frey was right, what he had done was anything but natural. The power he had wielded, the destruction he had wrought, it was beyond the scope of normal magic. And deep down, he feared that it was only the beginning. I'll be more careful," Xander finally managed, his voice barely above a whisper. "I promise." Frey gave his shoulder a reassuring squeeze. "That's all I can ask, lad." Xander frowned, his brow furrowing in doubt. "But what if I can't, Graphis? What if I can't control it, and innocent people get hurt? I don't think I can live with that kind of responsibility." The older artificer placed a reassuring hand on Xander's shoulder. "My dear boy, you underestimate yourself. The gods have chosen you for a reason, and they would not have done so if they did not believe in your ability to rise to the challenge. You have a good heart, Xander, and a keen mind. With time and proper guidance, I have no doubt that you will learn to harness this power in a way that brings more light than darkness to the world." Xander sighed, his gaze once again drawn to the orb in his hands. "I wish I could share your confidence, Graphis. But every time I look at this thing, all I can see is the destruction it's capable of. I don't know if I'm strong enough to be its master, rather than its slave." "Then it is your duty to become stronger," Graphis replied firmly. "You must not let fear consume you, Xander. Face this challenge head-on, and prove to the gods, and to yourself, that you are worthy of the power they have entrusted to you." Xander nodded, his resolve slowly hardening. "You're right, Graphis. I can't run from this. I have to at least try to understand it, to learn how to control it. For the sake of the caravan, and for my own sake as well. That's the spirit, my boy, Graphis said, clapping Xander on the back. Now, let's see what secrets this orb of slaughter holds, shall we? As they continued their journey, Xander couldn't help but feel a renewed sense of purpose. The power he had been granted was a double-edged sword, to be sure, but if he could learn to wield it responsibly, perhaps it could be a force for good. The weight of the burden had not diminished, but the determination to rise to the challenge had only grown stronger. The caravan had made good time, and as the sun began to dip below the horizon, they reached the next town on their route. Xander, his mind still preoccupied with the orb and its unsettling powers, followed the others as they set about the familiar task of making camp. As the rest of the caravan busied themselves with their respective duties, Xander found a quiet spot on the outskirts of the encampment, the orb of slaughter cradled in his hands. He knew he needed to study it, to understand its true nature and the extent of its abilities, but the prospect still filled him with a sense of unease. "All right, orb," he muttered, his fingers tracing the smooth, glassy surface. "Let's see what you're made of." Closing his eyes, Xander focused his mind, allowing his artificer's senses to delve into the depths of the orb. At first, he felt nothing but the swirling, smoky energy that seemed to emanate from the sphere. But as he probed deeper, a faint pulse began to resonate within it, a subtle rhythm that seemed to call out to him. Xander's brow furrowed in concentration as he followed the pulse, trying to discern its source and purpose. Gradually, the orb's secrets began to unfold before him, revealing a complex network of runes and enchantments, all woven together in an intricate tapestry of magic. Fascinating. Xander breathed, his eyes still closed as he delved deeper into the orb's mysteries. "It's like nothing I've ever encountered before." As he continued his examination, Xander began to understand the true nature of the orb of slaughter. It was, in essence, a vessel for a powerful curse, one that had the ability to drive its targets into a mindless, murderous rage. The energy that fueled this curse was drawn from the deaths of the orb's victims, a twisted, self-perpetuating cycle of violence. Xander's heart sank as the implications of this revelation sank in. This was no mere trinket or tool, it was a weapon, a harbinger of chaos and destruction. And he had been the one to unleash it, however inadvertently, upon the unsuspecting goblins. "What have I done?" he whispered, his eyes snapping open as the full weight of his actions became clear. "How can I ever hope to control something like this?" Suddenly, a hand on his shoulder caused him to jump, his focus broken. He looked up to see Graphis standing over him, a concerned expression on his weathered face. "Easy, my boy," the older artificer said, his voice low and soothing. "I could see the turmoil written all over your face from across the camp. Tell me, what have you learned about that orb of yours?" Xander took a deep, shuddering breath, his grip tightening on the cursed sphere. It's worse than I thought, Graphis. This isn't just some magical trinket, it's a vessel for a powerful curse, one that draws its power from the deaths of its victims. I'm not sure I can control it. What if I lose control again, and innocent people get hurt?" Graphis nodded slowly, his brow furrowing as he listened to Xander's explanation. "I see. So the power you've been granted is a double-edged sword, one that could just as easily bring ruin as it could aid us. This is a grave responsibility indeed." Xander felt a surge of panic rising within him. "Then what am I to do, Graphis? I can't just ignore this power, but I don't know if I have the strength to wield it properly. I'm afraid that if I try to use it, I'll only end up causing more harm than good." The older artificer placed a reassuring hand on Xander's shoulder. "My dear boy, you are not alone in this. The gods have seen fit to grant you this power for a reason, and they would not have done so if they did not believe you capable of handling it. But you are right to be wary. The orb of slaughter is a dangerous and unpredictable force, one that must be approached with the utmost care and wisdom." Xander looked up at his mentor, his eyes pleading. "Then how do I do that, Graphis? How do I learn to control this power without risking the lives of those I care about?" Graphis considered the question for a moment, his gaze thoughtful. The answer, I believe, lies in your own strength of character, Xander. The gods have deemed you worthy of this burden, and now it is up to you to prove them right. You must learn to channel this power, to bend it to your will without succumbing to its darker impulses. He paused, his expression turning more serious. But you cannot do it alone. You will need the guidance and support of those around you, your fellow artificers, your comrades in the caravan, even the gods themselves. Together, you must find a way to harness this power in a way that brings light to the world, rather than darkness. Xander nodded, his resolve hardening. Then that is what I will do, Graphis. I may not know the full extent of this power, or how to control it, but I will not let it control me. I will find a way to use it for good, to protect those I care about and to fulfill the gods' intentions for me. Graphis smiled, his eyes shining with pride. That's the spirit, my boy. And know that I, and the rest of the caravan, will be here to support you every step of the way. Together, we will uncover the true nature of this orb of slaughter, and ensure that its power is used to bring hope, not despair, to the world. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting the camp in a warm, golden glow, Xander felt a newfound sense of purpose. The burden he carried was a heavy one, but he was no longer alone. With the guidance of his mentor and the support of his companions, he would rise to the challenge, and prove himself worthy of the gods' trust.